Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square Washington's state government reporter. And in today's episode, the National Federation of Independent Business this week released a Washington-specific version of their Small Business Economic Trends report. It's actually a compilation of trends for a 6-month period, mostly over late fall and into the winter months and early spring of this year. So, very interesting to see what small business owners are saying. Will they expand? Will they hire? Are you thinking about having to lay off employees? That sort of a thing. I think you'll find it very fascinating. And we have Washington State's director for NFIB, Patrick Connors, waiting in on that for us today. Now, one of the reasons many Washington business owners are packing their bags is, of course, the coming income tax, on top of all the other B&O taxes and regulations that we have and employee costs. And the Pasco City Council this week kind of stepped out there and said, we want to ensure everybody knows how we feel about the income tax. We want to make sure that everybody knows how we feel about any future city councils moving toward an income tax in Pasco, Washington, which is in the Tri-Cities in central Washington. So we're going to share some of that conversation from Monday night's city council meeting with you. And then finally, if you are a renter, and 46 million plus Americans are renters, maybe you're doing that out of convenience because you move around for different jobs, or maybe you're doing it out of necessity. Can't save up enough money to purchase your first home, that sort of a thing. Well, there's a new report that has come out from WalletHub that kind of looked at the best places, worst places, and not just where rents are super high or low, but also quality of life factors weighed in. It was nearly 24 different metrics that WalletHub looked at, and they looked at 180 major metro cities in the country. And I think you'll be interested to find out where 4 large cities in our state, Seattle, Vancouver, Spokane, Tacoma, fell in those metrics for the WalletHub report on rentals. All right, the National Federation of Independent Business yesterday released a Washington-specific version of they do this monthly, their Small Business Economic Trends report. What they released was a 6-month compilation of figures for Washington state. And they looked at a number of important categories where Washington is falling well below national trends for small business. One of them was, are you expecting the economy to improve? Another was, do you plan to increase employment for your business? And then finally, is now a good time for your business to expand? We did not score very well in any of those questioned categories. So, in an interview today that I had with Patrick Connor, state director here in Washington for the National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, he said the results he hopes will be a wake up call for Olympia lawmakers whose policies NFIB blames for crushing Washington business.
Our state's average minimum wage is the highest in the country. So when you start with a base wage that is higher than most everyone else in the country, that puts you at a competitive disadvantage. Add on to it that we are an outlier when it comes to the benefits paid and the premiums or taxes collected from employers for things like unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. We're only one of 4 states, in fact, that has a state-run workers' compensation system, and it shows. Our state-run system spends $1.75 for every dollar that they bring in. They manage to balance the books by bringing down reserves and investment income, thankfully. But you can't sustain that, which is why we're seeing year-over-year increases of nearly 5% just in the workers' comp system. We've got an unemployment insurance system that has been retooled, and now we're being told that employers could expect as much as a $700 to $800 million hit over the next 2 to 3 years because they're changing the calculations on the premium base. Add to that, we've got a paid family medical leave program, which, while very popular, is terribly expensive. We are about to hit the cap on the premiums or the taxes that are assessed on employers and workers alike. We've just launched the Washington Cares program, another tax on workers, and soon we'll have the Washington Saves program, which, while well intended, will take more dollars, perhaps 5% on average, out of workers' paychecks to put it into a mandatory retirement savings account. So every time you turn around, the state is asking small employers to do more, to pay more, and it makes it difficult then for them to invest in their workers, to invest in their business, and to do a better job of being able to expand their operations and serve their customer base.
Now, among the NFIB findings here in Washington for, members basically saying, I can't expand, I can't add new employees, I might have to shut down my business. Labor costs dramatically worse here in Washington state than in the US overall, um, with more than twice as many of the respondents saying that this is their top problem. Apparently, the last time the NFIB took this survey of Washington small businesses, 9% said that those employee costs were their top concern. Now it's 19% saying that is their top concern. And the best single metric they say on the health overall of the small business environment is their optimism index. Um, it currently rates conditions in the US overall as decent, slightly above their historical average in, other reports in recent past. But here in Washington state, it was not so good. It's a flashing red light. And Connor told me that the cost of hiring is definitely keeping employees or keeping employers, I should say, from bringing on new employees. And they're hearing and seeing from their members how bad it really is. As he put it, I'll read this quote you shared with me. The millionaire's tax is just adding bitter frosting onto a terrible cake when it comes to our state's economy and job creation.
You can go to any downtown core in any city or town in the state, and you will find probably not just one, but several empty storefronts. That's not a coincidence. That's a result of the bad economic decision making coming out of Olympia on a regular basis. I mean, the fact that we had a millionaire's tax enacted this year on top of the state's largest $9.5 billion package of taxes just in 2025 is astounding. I mean, how you expect people to absorb $15 billion in new taxes over two legislative sessions to me just is nonsensical. Um, we will continue to see more and more vacant storefronts. You're going to see fewer small businesses because they are going to look elsewhere. And if the legislature doesn't dramatically change course, more and more your decisions for shopping, for entertainment opportunities, for dining, I mean, we're headed to the point to where every retailer is going to be a big box store, every restaurant is going to be a national chain because you've got to be big enough to absorb these costs where small businesses have a very difficult time competing. So I think you'll continue to see increases in the turnover of businesses. There may be a good number of new businesses created, but Washington has got a terrible record when it comes to maintaining those businesses. We have one of the nation's highest failure rate within 5 years. That situation is getting worse. It's not getting better. And bad decision making from Olympia, from the people who've been making these same decisions now for nearly a decade or longer when you talk about the governor's office, is driving our small business economy down the drain.
So, in the Small Business Economic Report for winter 2026, NFIB noted that Washington's unemployment rate is at 5.1%. That is well above the national average. In fact, ranks us 45th among all US states. So, not a glowing outlook. And again, NFIB is hoping that Washington policymakers, majority Democrats, will be paying attention and perhaps pivot, make some changes for the coming legislative session, and give them a break. So, the Pasco City Council is pushing back against Washington's new income tax. They adopted a resolution on Monday opposing state and local personal income taxes. And one of the council members said he wants to go even further by creating a procedural hurdle before any future local income tax could be considered. My colleague Tim Clauser has put up an article about this today on our Center Square Washington page. I encourage you to check that out. But here is part of what they discussed at Monday's Pasco City Council meeting.
We've seen the state of Washington take a kind of left turn in regards to income tax policy, from the capital gains tax to the millionaire's tax. Some of these things are being, they're being, I guess, stayed in the courts. But I think my position on this, the reason why I brought it up, is I think we should have the ability for the people to have a say. And so by putting in an ordinance, it provides that legal hurdle, procedural hurdle, and it allows the council to discuss along with the community if the city actually wants to do that. I totally understand some of the legal arguments in the presentation or in the staff report talked about, the state law supersedes local law, but at the same time, I think we should be able to speak for ourselves and have our own policy. And so, to me, I just believe it's a safeguard for the community. The benefits of not having a income tax speak for itself. I don't need to speak to that. And I know there's a lot of individuals in our city who would be in favor of that. And so, I would be in favor of this resolution tonight, and also bringing back that ordinance.
And of course, the latest on the fight over the income tax here in the state of Washington has us waiting to find out if the Secretary of State is, in fact, going to certify the initiative that hopes to repeal the income tax. Those signature petitions were turned in last Thursday to the office of Secretary of State Steve Hobbs. And I was told as of Tuesday that they expected to take a total of 2 to 3 weeks from the time of turn in before they would have those certified. Now, with more than 500,000 signatures turned in, and they only needed 309,000 valid voter signatures, it is highly likely, anticipated, of course, that that will in fact be qualified for the November ballot. But keep in mind, that's just the beginning of the big fight. Between now and November, we have 3 progressive leaning unions that have pledged about $3 million already for the fight. This comes from the Washington Education Association, that is the state teachers union, the Washington Federation of State Employees, WFSE, and also Service Employees International Union. They have chipped in about $1 million each for the fight to convince people that Washington's new income tax is a good idea. It'll be, again, ultimately up to voters come November, assuming that initiative qualifies for the ballot. And finally, in today's episode, roughly 46 million American households have opted to rent or been forced to rent rather than purchase a home. Sometimes it's out of convenience. You're moving around for a job. You're new to a city. Of course, you're going to rent and make sure you're going to be there long term. Other times it's cost, availability. But renting is not always cheaper than buying a home. Of course, the right road you take depends on a variety of factors, including an individual or family's financial means, of course, and how well the real estate market is doing. So there's so many different factors that play in. So to determine where renters can basically get the most bang for their buck, WalletHub compared more than 180 rental markets in large metro areas across the country, considering 21 different key measures for rental attractiveness. Not just how cheap the rent was, but how large of a place you got for that. How's the job market look there? How's the traffic? How is, public safety, everything else. So looking at a number of different factors that one would consider when choosing a market where they might work and have to rent. And so here is some of that conversation that I had this week with WalletHub analyst Chip Lupo on what exactly they were looking at in this report.
What we looked at were two criteria: rental market and affordability, and quality of life. And I think you could probably conclude which one of those areas is probably going to drag the Washington cities down. But from there, we applied 21 metrics, and those measure basically rental attractiveness, quality of life, ranging rental rates, comparing between to rent and mortgage payments, historical price changes, cost of living, availability, safety, wide range of criteria there. Seattle, 84th out of 182, somewhere in the middle. Tacoma, again, 172, Vancouver at 160.
So out of those 180 American metro areas, there were four uh, Washington cities that, ranked in there. None did terribly well. You did have Seattle come in at number 84, as you heard him say, and then Spokane at 152. Vancouver, Washington came in at 160th, and Tacoma was near dead last in the list at 172. But some states are doing a heck of a lot better. Again, when you consider things like the cost of the rent, the size of the place you get for that, the job availability in that area, traffic conditions, all those other sort of livability factors were considered. So here's what Chip Lupo at WalletHub had to say about the top placers in their list.
Well, the big winner is the state of Arizona. Three cities, Scottsdale, Gilbert, and Chandler, all part of the Phoenix Metroplex, top three. And then Peoria, Arizona at number 6. Overland Park, Kansas, a suburb of Kansas City at number 4. Columbia, Maryland, suburb of, sort of in between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and at number 5. What's interesting is top three, they do fare well in all three fare well in those rental market and affordability. But all three won in the top 10 in quality of life. I mean, you've got weather, and they're relatively safe once you get outside of downtown Phoenix. Now, of course, weather, if you don't mind the dry 110 heat pretty much year round, then that's be a good thing. So the weather is usually cooperative, and it's relatively affordable. It's a pretty high income, predominantly mostly retirees, but there is plenty of leeway there for folks of middle income who want to rent in the Phoenix area, and those three are right there at the top of the list.
And a little bit of a closer look at the top two in WalletHub's placement for best places for renters, best and worst places for renters in the country. Scottsdale, their best city for both the availability of jobs and the driving environment. I guess traffic's not terrible in Scottsdale. They also have the fourth best weather and the seventh best recreation options in Scottsdale. Now, not the cheapest city to rent in. That only came in at 57th out of the 182 cities that they looked at. So not the cheapest rents, but people there on average are spending only about 22% of their income on their rent. And when you look at places like Seattle, where many are spending in excess of 30% of their income just for rents, that's where those Scottsdale numbers came in a little bit better. And then the city also has the largest home square footage in the country. Renters there have, on average, nearly 2,200 square feet for rental properties in Scottsdale. It's a lot bigger than my house. And that number two on that was Gilbert, Arizona. And they were the second best place to rent, according to WalletHub. 10th highest average home square footage in the country at 2,100 square feet, and 37th best rental affordability, with the average person in Gilbert paying about 21% of their income for rent. So, a lot of things to consider here. Um, you know, of course, those Arizona top placers, that's great if you can stand living in 100 plus degree weather much of the year. For a lot of retired folks, that's a very welcome climate. There's others that prefer a climate like Washington, where we've, pretty much got 4 seasons here. So those are other considerations. But when you start thinking about, how burdensome rental prices are and how it's really keeping people out of being able to purchase their first homes in most of Washington state and many other, high cost states, that is, you start to consider, well, maybe I can withstand a climate of 100 degrees. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad year round. And it is sad, of course, because I know many of you, like me, I've got adult children in their 20s who wonder if they're ever going to be able to afford purchasing a home. They're locked into these high rents where they pay more than I do for mortgage payment. And again, they're just throwing it away month after month. And as a result, then unable to really save for a down payment on a home. So, a lot to consider, a little bit discouraging when you think about it, but we got to expose it and talk about it. And hopefully, we can do some things to maybe remediate and maybe make some policy changes that will reduce some of those burdens for our renters here in the state. So that's it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I appreciate you watching as always. Hope you'll join us again on Thursday.